Political factions and the death of a powerful monarch lead to rivalries in the crumbling Holy Roman Empire. Popes are dying left and right during a time when political factions lead to violence. In this chaos, rival popes stand trial against each other. One is the current sitting pope, the other, a corpse. Happy spooky season, y'all! We're taking a break from the current events and news of the day to cover a spooky trial from history, the Dead Pope Trial, also known as the Cadaver Synod of 987. Thank you to the sponsor of today's video, PDS Debt. This economy is starting to feel spookier and spookier, and having your finances in order feels more important than ever. I have struggled and continue to struggle with debt. I have 2 degrees, a house, and I've started multiple businesses in the last 2 years. Life happens, and debt happens, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. If you're looking for help managing your debt, PDS Debt may be able to help you. They have customized 0% interest options for people struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. Because of the last few years being so rough due to COVID, certain types of debt can be reduced or paid off much faster while saving you interest. PDS Debt is giving my qualified viewers a free debt savings analysis just for completing the 30-second online debt assessment. You can take the assessment by going to pdsdebt.com/Miller. You'll receive a full breakdown on how to save on interest each month and the quickest way to take care of your debt. So if you've been trying to claw your way out of debt, making payments every month but your balances don't seem to go down, PDS Debt could be for you. They roll all of your payments into one low 0% interest monthly payment. Everyone with over $10,000 in debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit are accepted. So like I said, PDS Debt is offering free debt analysis to my viewers just for completing the debt assessment at www.pdsdebt.com/Miller. Thanks to PDS Debt for partnering with me on today's video. Let's take a step back though. Let's talk about the history of the Holy Roman Empire. Not all of it, because that would take forever, but just enough to add some context to why the hell we had a dead cadaver on trial, a former pope, no less. Alright, Charlemagne. Ever heard of him? He reigned over the Holy Roman Empire starting in the year 800. During his reign, there were high standards for education and political stability. Unfortunately, then he died, and the Holy Roman Empire was divided into 3, between his grandsons, Louis the German, Charles the Bald, and Lothair. And then after that, more divisions occurred, creating political complications. That, combined with other external forces threatening the Holy Roman Empire, it was a mess, okay? In all of that chaos, you had papal elections of popes, which were manipulated in favor of noble factions. Bishops were elected by local clergy, and local families had significant influence over the elections. Basically, if the pope was loyal to your faction, that gave you a lot of power. So people meddled. So popes weren't elected because they were spiritual leaders. They were elected because they were in favor of a certain party or group. Then there was this guy named Bishop Formosus of Portus, a western suburb of Rome, and Formosus had really made a name for himself as a bishop. The Pope had called on him to manage important church matters in places like Bulgaria, France, and Trent. But then, in the year 872, Pope John VIII was named to the papacy. He was a rival of Formosus, because as you grew in notoriety within the Catholic Church, you also gained a lot of enemies, because, again, factions. And Formosus was excommunicated by John VIII in the year 876. The charges: attempt to become Bishop of Bulgaria, being a traitor to Charles the Bald, and coveting the papacy. You see, you weren't allowed to be bishop of more than one place, and you weren't allowed to want to be pope. You were supposed to be called to it by the divine. 6 years later, the excommunication of Formosus was lifted, and in return, he promised never to return to Rome or execute priestly duties. But that didn't last long, and in 882, Pope John VIII was assassinated, clobbered over the head with a hammer. He was the first pope to ever be assassinated. And a new pope was installed, Pope Marinus. He liked Formosus, so he released him from the oath and restored Formosus to his old diocese. But frankly, during this time, being a pope, not a great job. Popes were dropping like flies. Marinus lasted less than 2 years. Then St. Adrian III lasted 1 year before being assassinated. And Stephen V lasted a total of 6 years. Then in 891, Formosus finally got that sweet, sweet papacy. Now old Pope Stephen V, Old Steve, he had crowned Guy of Spoleto Emperor of Rome, but it didn't seem like many people really liked this guy, huh? So when Formosus took the papacy, he was secretly conspiring with this other guy named Arnulf in Germany to take over the Roman Empire. Once Guy of Spoleto died, leaving the empire to his son, Arnulf took that as his cue to attack, promptly taking over control of the empire. The alliance didn't last long though, and Formosus died in the year 896. His successor, Pope Boniface VI, he died in 15 days. 15 days into his tenure as pope, that guy died, and then came Pope Stephen VI. Old Steve number 6. It's really shocking to me that so many popes wanted to be named Steve at that point in history. Good old Steve, though, he had a bone to pick with old dead Formosus. Literally. Stories differ as to why old Steve decided to exhume Formosus' dead corpse, stand it up in a synod, or a place of ecclesiastic judgment, basically a Catholic church court, and make him, the cadaver, stand trial. Some say it was to win favor of a faction who hated Formosus. Some say it was to cover for himself, because Steve had been guilty of the same crimes that Formosus had been excommunicated for all those years ago. And then others say he was just having a complete mental break. Who really knows? What we do know is that old Steve propped Formosus' corpse up in this church courtroom, ordered him to be dressed in his popely attire, assigned him an 18-year-old deacon to act as his defense attorney, and then spent 2 hours screaming at a rotting corpse. At one point during the trial, an earthquake shook the entire city, a sign from onlookers that old Steve was angering God. That didn't stop Stephen, though. Formosus was found guilty on all counts. Again, remember, he was already excommunicated for this, and he was stripped of his papal vestments, and the 3 fingers on his right hand that he used for blessing, cut off. Steve had Formosus buried in an unmarked grave, but then was like, nah, I can do better. Had him dug back up, threw his body into the Tiber River. According to legend, either a fisherman or a monk found Formosus' body in the river, and he was eventually laid to rest with the other popes at St. Peter's Cathedral. As for old Steve number 6, yeah, the people of Rome didn't really like what he did, and eventually they rioted and threw him in prison, where he was strangled to death. Again, being a pope, not a great job in this time of history. The next pope, Pope Romanus, was overthrown in 1 year. His successor, Pope Theodore II, only lasted for 20 days. But he was the one during those 20 days to have finally found Formosus' body and laid it to rest a third and final time. And that's the cadaver synod, the dead pope trial. Does it have anything to do with modern US law? No. But it's spooky season, and it had to be done. Thank you again to my partner on today's video, PDS Debt. Don't wait till you're a corpse to get your debt figured out. PDS Debt is offering free debt analysis to my viewers just for completing the debt assessment at www.pdsdebt.com/Miller. If you enjoyed this and want to support my work bringing you videos like this, please consider becoming a member of this channel or joining me over on Patreon, where we have a lively Discord chat, Leeja's book club, behind the scenes stuff, and so much more. Thank you especially to newest Patreon supporters Helen Hunt on Wheels, Travis Willett, Nathan, and Tay. And as always, thank you to my royal patrons Old Man Pence, Fork McSpoon, Ellen L, and Daniel Taylor. And a very special thank you to my multi-platinum patrons Brett Piontek and Cyrus Solka. Your generosity is greatly appreciated, and it makes this channel what it is, so thank you. If you liked this video, you might also like some of my past spooky season videos. I've made a whole playlist for you here, where you can watch them. A very fun one for me was when I reacted to the Simpsons Halloween episodes. Thanks so much for watching, have a good day, bye-bye!